Before Zeus reigned on Olympus, before Osiris judged the dead in Egypt, there was Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, where humanity first learned to write, to build cities, and to worship gods. Here, in the cradle of civilization, the divine walked hand in hand with mankind. The gods weren't distant and abstract. They were everywhere, in the winds that blew from the desert, in the floods of the Tigris and Euphrates, and in the stars that watched silently overhead. From mighty sky gods and goddesses of love and war to fearsome rulers of the underworld, the Mesopotamians built one of the world's oldest, most complex pantheons. In this video, we explore the essential gods and goddesses of Mesopotamian mythology, their powers, their myths, and the ways they shaped both heaven and earth. This is a journey into one of humanity's oldest spiritual worlds and the divine beings who ruled it. To understand the Mesopotamian gods, we need to first understand the world they ruled. Mesopotamian mythology wasn't a single unified belief system. It evolved over thousands of years, from the Sumerians to the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, each civilization layering its own interpretations onto the divine. Yet despite the changes, certain gods remained central. The heavens belonged to Anu, the Sky Father. The earth was governed by Enlil, lord of the wind and storms. The deep waters below, the source of life and magic, were ruled by Enki. And beyond them all lay Kur, the shadowy underworld, ruled by Arishkigal. These gods formed a cosmic hierarchy, powerful but not all-loving. They could bless humanity one moment and destroy it the next. Worship was not about love. It was about respect, fear, and survival. The Mesopotamians believed everything, from rivers to crops to kingship, flowed from divine will. Cities each had their patron gods. Temples weren't just places of worship, but literal homes for the gods on earth. This was a world where the divine was both majestic and dangerously close. Anu, god of the sky. At the highest tier of the Mesopotamian pantheon sat Anu, the god of the sky, the firmament, and ultimate authority. Anu wasn't the most active deity in myths, but his presence loomed above all. He was the source of kingship, law, and divine judgment. Just as the stars were fixed in the heavens, Anu's rule symbolized unshakable cosmic order. He was the father of many gods, including Enlil and Ishtar, and presided over the Anunnaki, the great assembly of deities. When the gods needed to render judgment, they often did so in Anu's name. When humans defied the divine order, it was Anu who gave the nod for punishment. His temple, Inanna, in the city of Uruk, was among the most sacred in Mesopotamia, and though he rarely stepped into human affairs, his authority was final. Even the mightiest gods deferred to Anu. In Mesopotamia, all power began with the sky. Enlil, lord of wind, storms, and judgment. If Anu was the distant sky father, Enlil was the force that moved the world. As the god of air, wind, and storms, Enlil's breath filled the sky, stirred the clouds, and determined the fate of nations. He was second only to Anu, but far more involved in the affairs of both gods and mortals. Enlil was feared and revered, a god of immense authority, whose decisions could bring either prosperity or devastation. It was he who bestowed kingship on cities, granting divine right to rule. But he was also quick to anger. In the Sumerian flood myth, it is Enlil who becomes so disturbed by humanity's noise and chaos that he sends a great deluge to wipe them out. In contrast to the clever and compassionate Enki, Enlil represents raw, righteous power, the force of divine law without mercy. His great temple, Ekur, stood in Nippur, the religious heart of Mesopotamia. Here, priests mediated between Enlil and the people, ensuring his favor and trying to avoid his wrath. Enlil didn't just govern nature, he governed destiny. In a world as unpredictable as ancient Mesopotamia, his winds could either lift you to greatness or blow your world away. Enki, god of water, magic, and wisdom. Where Enlil ruled with force, Enki governed with cleverness, compassion, and wit. Known to the Akkadians as Ea, Enki was the god of fresh water, creation, magic, crafts, fertility, and above all, wisdom. He lived in the Abzu, the primeval freshwater abyss beneath the earth, a mysterious source of life and knowledge. His domain wasn't just physical water, it was the flow of ideas, inventions, and divine insight. Enki was often the savior in Mesopotamian myth. When Enlil decided to flood the earth and erase humanity, it was Enki who secretly warned the human hero Atrahasis or Utnapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh, guiding him to build a boat and preserve life. That story would later echo in biblical and global flood legends. He also created the Mi, divine decrees that controlled every aspect of civilization: kingship, law, music, agriculture, and more. In myths, Inanna once tricks him into giving them to her, showcasing both his generosity and his vulnerability to trickery. Unlike many gods, Enki wasn't feared, he was loved. He healed the sick, guided mortals, and brought balance when the divine world tipped too far into chaos or cruelty. In a harsh world, Enki was a source of hope, the god who whispered solutions, who smoothed what was rough, and who reminded both gods and humans, wisdom is greater than wrath. Inanna, or Ishtar, goddess of love, war, and power. Few deities in world mythology are as bold, passionate, and unpredictable as Inanna, later known to the Akkadians and Babylonians as Ishtar. She was the goddess of love, beauty, war, sex, fertility, and political power. But don't let the titles fool you. Inanna wasn't a gentle goddess of romance. She was intense, commanding, and utterly unafraid to take what she wanted, whether from gods or men. Her most famous myth is her descent into the underworld. Inanna strips away her divine garments and powers at each of the 7 gates until she stands naked before her sister, Arishkigal, queen of the dead. She is killed, hung on a hook, and the world above begins to wither in her absence. Only through divine trickery is she resurrected, but at a cost. Someone must take her place in the underworld. When she finds her lover Dumuzi on the throne, celebrating in her absence, she condemns him to die in her place. This myth isn't just about death and rebirth. It reveals the duality of Inanna, both a giver of life and a bringer of destruction. Her love could nurture empires or tear them apart. Worshipped widely across Mesopotamia, especially in Uruk, Inanna stood at the center of religion, politics, and myth. She embodied the chaos and beauty of desire, the hunger for power, and the stormy balance between creation and conquest. Inanna didn't ask for devotion. She demanded it. Arishkigal, queen of the underworld, in the dark, silent depths of Kur, the Mesopotamian underworld, reigns Arishkigal, the sister and mirror opposite of Inanna. While Inanna embodies life, passion, and movement, Arishkigal represents stillness, death, and the inescapable grip of fate. She rules over a bleak realm where all souls eventually go, regardless of status or virtue. There is no paradise, no punishment, only a dusty half-existence in the land of no return. Arishkigal is not evil, but she is absolute. Even the gods fear to enter her domain, as seen in the myth of Inanna's descent. Her authority in the underworld is total, and once someone crosses her gates, they rarely return. Trapped in isolation, Arishkigal is a tragic figure, powerful, yet bound to a realm no one desires. In some versions of the myth, she is deeply emotional, even vulnerable, showing that grief and loss exist not just in humanity, but in the gods as well. Ninhersag, Earth Mother and Giver of Life. At the foundation of all life stood Ninhersag, the great mother goddess of the earth. She was known by many names, Ki, Nintu, Mamu, and Belet Ili, but always as the divine womb from which life sprang. Associated with fertility, childbirth, mountains, and vegetation, Ninhersag wasn't a warrior or a ruler like other deities. She was a nurturer, a creator, and a healer. In early myths, she helps create the first humans from clay alongside Enki, but when Enki oversteps, taking forbidden knowledge and abusing his divine power, it is Ninhersag who punishes him by withdrawing her healing. Only after a period of suffering and reconciliation does she return to restore balance, showing her power lies not in vengeance, but in mercy. Worshipped across ancient Sumer, she represented the land itself, solid, nourishing, and eternal. In a world governed by floods and famine, Ninhersag was the steady hand of life that kept the world growing. Utu or Shamash, sun god and bringer of justice. Every morning, the sun god Utu, known to the Akkadians and Babylonians as Shamash, rose from the eastern mountains, driving his golden chariot across the sky and illuminating the world below. But Utu wasn't just a god of light. He was the bringer of truth, justice, and moral order. Where the sun shone, lies were exposed, and corruption had no place to hide. He watched over contracts, kings, and courtrooms. Ancient law codes, including the famous Code of Hammurabi, invoked Shamash as their divine source. Utu also appears in myth as a protector of heroes. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, he helps the king on his perilous journey. He blesses honest prayers and punishes oath-breakers. He was worshipped primarily in Sippar and Larsa, where great temples rose in his name. In a world where justice was often uncertain, Utu was the sun that promised clarity, fairness, and the power of truth. Inanna or Sin, the moon god. When the sun set and darkness claimed the sky, Inanna, also known as Sin, rose gently above the horizon, casting his silver glow over the land. As the god of the moon, Inanna governed not only the night, but also time itself. His phases marked the rhythms of life, calendars, tides, rituals, and harvests. The Mesopotamians trusted his cycles to guide them through the uncertainty of seasons and fate. Inanna was the father of Utu and Inanna, making him part of a divine family that governed both day and night, love and law. He was wise, calm, and contemplative, a divine observer. His primary cult center was one of the oldest and most important cities in Sumer. There, his grand temple, the Ziggurat of stood as a symbol of lunar majesty. While other gods ruled with power or passion, Inanna ruled with patience, the quiet strength of the moon watching over a restless world. Tiamat, chaos dragon and mother of creation. Before the gods were gods, there was Tiamat. She was the primordial goddess of saltwater and chaos, a vast cosmic dragon who swirled in the dark void with her consort, Apsu, the god of fresh water. From their union, the first gods were born. But when these younger gods grew noisy and disruptive, Apsu plotted to destroy them. Tiamat at first resisted, but after Apsu's death, she turned furious and unleashed her wrath upon creation. In the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, Tiamat becomes a terrifying force of vengeance. She births monstrous demons and declares war on her divine descendants. No god can stand against her until Marduk rises. Marduk challenges Tiamat, defeats her in battle, and splits her body in two, creating the sky from her upper half and the earth from her lower half. From her destruction, the ordered world is born. Tiamat is not just a villain, she is the embodiment of chaos, creation, and untamed power. She is the ocean before the shores, the scream before the song. Her myth captures the ancient fear that from chaos, even the gods must wrestle meaning, and that creation always comes at a price. Marduk, god of order and Babylon's champion, from the chaos left in Tiamat's wake rose a new god, Marduk, the patron deity of Babylon and the supreme god of the later Mesopotamian pantheon. In the Enuma Elish, the gods, desperate and leaderless, turn to Marduk. Young, powerful, and cunning, he agrees to face Tiamat, but only if he is granted total authority over all gods if he wins. With a net, a storm, and an arrow, Marduk defeats the Chaos Dragon. He then splits her in two, shaping the cosmos from her body. He sets the stars in motion, orders the calendar, appoints gods to rule over nature and society, and finally creates humankind from the blood of Tiamat's ally, Kingu, not out of love, but so that mortals can serve the gods and relieve them of their burdens. Marduk becomes the divine architect, Not just a warrior, but a builder, a lawgiver, and a king of kings. Babylon declares him its high god, and his name is invoked in ceremonies, kingship rituals, and temple hymns. Where Tiamat symbolized chaos, Marduk embodied divine order. A hero who didn't just defeat the storm, he reshaped the world in its aftermath. Long before the Greek gods climbed Olympus or the Norse gods rode into battle, the divine dramas of Mesopotamia were already shaping human imagination. Their stories of creation, destruction, power, love, and death laid the foundation for countless myths that followed. The gods of Mesopotamia influenced Canaanite, Hebrew, and even Greco-Roman thought. Inanna became Aphrodite, Enki echoed in Hermes. The flood of Atrahasis flowed into the story of Noah. These gods were not flawless ideals. They were powerful, unpredictable, and deeply human in their emotions. They punished without mercy and loved without warning. Yet they revealed what mattered most to ancient peoples: survival, order, fertility, kingship, and the thin line between chaos and civilization. Though their temples have long crumbled and their ziggurats turned to dust, the gods of Mesopotamia still live, not just in museums and tablets, but in the myths we tell, the stories we believe, and the archetypes we carry in our hearts. Because to understand these gods is to understand how humanity first tried to make sense of the cosmos.